Then fear not, Faustus, but be resolute, and try the utmost magic can perform. Sint mihi de acarantis propite, valiet numen triplex Jehove, igneae aere aquatani spiritus salvete, orientis princeps Beelzebub infernae ardentis monarchae demigorgon propitamus, vos una pereat et surgat Mephistopheles quod tumeris per Jehovam Gehennem e consecratum aquam quam nunc spargo simunque crucis quod nunc fatio e per vota nostra ipse nunc surgat nobis dictatis Mephistopheles. Hello and welcome to Dungeons and Not Quite Divinity, because I was an idiot and put up a character that's not in the Bible and everyone voted on it. So, today we're talking about the tragical history of Dr. Faustus, and for once this is going to be more of a character build video than a campaign review sort of format, because Dr. Faustus, or The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe, isn't exactly what you'd call a playable story. It's very much, Faustus sells his soul to Mephistopheles and then spends a bunch of time living it up, tricking people, dicking around with the Pope, committing all kinds of sacrilege and living the high life, and then getting dragged off to hell. It's, not really something a GM can work with story-wise. However, Dr. Faustus himself would make a good, good figure to base your character off of. So, what exactly is, Dr. Faustus? Well, the answer at first seems obvious. He's a human fiend-packed warlock, plain and simple. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. You see, in D&D 5th edition, fiend-packed warlocks are really focused on burny, smitey combat type magic, while Faustus is more of the, know-it-all conniver charmer. He's a con artist with a PhD, essentially. Now, also, there is a feat that's performed in the play where Dr. Faustus turns invisible and dicks around with the Pope that can't actually be performed by a fiend-packed warlock because in 5th edition, and I think most other editions, you have invisibility and greater invisibility. Now, invisibility has a very interesting little caveat where it ends if you cast a spell at someone or if you make an attack. Greater invisibility does not have this caveat. Greater invisibility isn't on the normal warlock spell list, and which is okay. Each warlock's subclass has an expanded spell list. Warlocks have an expanded spell list, like other clerics, like the Circle of the Land Druid. Well, like clerics in the Circle of the Land Druid. What's stupid is that while the Circle of the Land Druid and Clerics automatically have those spells prepared. They automatically know those spells. Those are extra spells known for them. Essentially, they are, free extra options of still cost a spell slot to cast them, but you know them for free. When it comes to the Warlock, those extra spells are options that you can take, not actually extra spells that you automatically know, which is stupid. So, okay, that's all right. We'll look at the, fiend list, see if greater invisibility is there. No, it's not. See, like I said, fiend warlocks are really about the burny, tormenty, smitey stuff. So, but in the play, Dr. Faustus sells his soul to to Lucifer via Mephistopheles. Obviously, he's a fiend pact warlock. Thematically, yes, technically, but mechanically, Dr. Faustus is a Fey pact warlock, because their extra class features are all around charming and being tricky, and basically, like, aside from the free teleport they get at like level 6, all of their stuff is, yeah, you're charmed now, or, oh, you tried to charm me, I'm gonna pull an Uno reverse card and now you're charmed by me. It's a fiend or a Thaylok will charm you. You will. There's no saying no. It's like, even if they don't, even if you make the save for their spells, they've got class features that's like, no, you're charmed. But also, they have greater invisibility on their spell list, which means a Feylock Faustus can turn invisible and straight up punch the Pope without losing invisibility, which, yes, happens in the play. Arguably, Feylock could work thematically, given, one, Mephistopheles never actually lies out or in the play, which is a very Fey-like quality, and two, aside from the fact that all of his answers regarding cosmology match the current current church Catholic doctrine of the time, and thus are pretty much all wrong by today's knowledge. But two, based off my very, very cursory look, Mephistopheles as an entity appears for the first time in lore, in fiction, in the Faust legend, which the Tragical History of Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe is based off of. So, and given the fact that, the Catholic Church had a habit of either, of taking, various folkloric spirits and other gods and either, sanctifying them or literally demonizing them, it's fairly safe to assume, it's fairly safe to say, if, assuming Mephistopheles himself isn't based solely for the Faust legend, he may have been some sort of Fey entity in, pre-Christian Germanic folklore. I'm just spitballing, this is something I'd be happy to rule for a game. I'm nowhere near confident enough to actually go out on a ledge and say this is probably what actually happened. This is like a what if for the purpose of D&D, because, you know, these, when it comes to these Dungeons and Divinity, I try and match the story as close to the mechanics of the game as possible, because I'm viewing the tagline of this series is viewing, God's word through the lens of the devil's game. This is a weird other episode because people voted for Dr. Faustus. So, what feats have did Dr. Faustus accomplish in the play, notable feats in the play, and what could, how can they be accomplished in D&D? So you may also say to yourself, why can't we just multi-class and pick up greater invisibility from another class list, like wizard or something? Because obviously Dr. Faustus has high intelligence given all the knowledge he has. He's a scholar after all. Well, because we need a lot of levels in Warlock to complete some of these feats. So it's not, it is, so this is specifically named in the play. However, it's not demonstrated, or it's not shown in the stage directions, because we're talking about Elizabethan theater here. So there's a lot of telling, not showing, because, while Dr. Faustus was on the cutting edge of special effects in regards to Elizabethan theater, the cutting edge of special effects in regards to Elizabethan theater was a shit ton of fireworks. Literally, all of the flashing magical effects are just produced with fireworks in the stage directions. In fact, when Mephistopheles and Dr. Faustus chase the Pope and the friars off stage, they throw fireworks at them. This is an actual stage direction in the play, and it can't. And I love it. I am here for it. I'm not here for the fire code violations, but Elizabethan era, there wasn't a fire code to speak of. But that aside, so Dr. Faustus is said to have drawn a chariot to dragons and flown them to the top of Mount Olympus to view the stars, which I didn't cover in the Media Musings episode covering Dr. Faustus, but is an interesting nod / quirk, it's probably an allusion to the myth of Bellerophon, who famously tried to fly up to Olympus, but on the back of Pegasus, but fell to his death when, Pegasus was bitten by a gadfly. But so, how do we, make a chariot of dragons to fly us about? Well, there are two ways I could see that, see this being either accomplished or faked. If you want to actually try to accomplish it yourself, first you have to find a dragon, or a drake, or a wyvern. Then, if you actually go after a dragon, you have to get through its legendary resistances, because they have 3 where they can just say, no, I passed the save. On the other hand, this will probably be easier with something like a wyvern or a drake, which doesn't have this issue. But you find your draconic creature, whether or not it can actually fly doesn't matter. Well, actually, for this one, whether or not it flies actually does matter, because both of the spells you need take concentration. So, you cast Charm Monster on it, and then have it pull you about on a flying chariot. The second is you essentially wait for a particularly cloudy or foggy day, cast Fly on yourself, and go up to the top of any particular mountain you wish to do this with, while casting Minor Illusion to make it sound like you're being, in a chariot being pulled by dragons. Minor Illusion makes a sound as loud as a shout, so it's questionable as to whether the DM will allow it, but I'd let it pass. Now, and of course, he raises or conjures Alexander and Helen of Troy for various nobles. Now, this, seeing as how they're never physically touched and they never actually say anything, this can be done with the Warlock invocation Misty Visions, which allows you to cast Silent Image at will. Makes an image up to 15 feet that can actually be moved about and animated, but, as per the spell's name, it is silent. So, we've got, Chariot of Dragons, either Charm Monster or Fly and Minor Illusion. We've got our, conjuring the spirits of the dead, which don't actually answer and just stand there for inspection, our Silent Image. And then we have, dicking around with the Pope, which I'll say is a combination of Greater Invisibility and Eldritch Blast. Because every Warlock has to have Eldritch Blast. Well, I mean, it's better than throwing fireworks. So, and then another is he summons Mephistopheles. Now, the way the D&D Warlock works, your patron isn't at your beck and call. So he has Mephistopheles fetch grates from the other side of the world. How do we do this? So we can either use Infernal Calling, which summons a devil to do stuff for you for a brief period of time, or with a bunch of caveats. Basically, it's like you have to make a check, or you have to do something, tell it to do something that is within its nature, or it will tear your face off, and it's likely to just tear your face off anyways. There is a way to get around this. If you cast Magic Circle and Planar Binding on it, then it's bound to your service, so that there is a way to get around that. Or you could stretch the wording of Speedy Courier, which summons an air elemental. Technically, the way that spell works is you put something in the chest that the air elemental is carrying, and it delivers it for you. Arguably, I'd say you can put a note in there as like, hey, give me some grapes, and then the person would put grapes in the chest and have it come back. I'd rule that as okay. As specifically written, that's not exactly how the spell works. So, I'd suggest the magic circle planar, I'd suggest the, infernal calling. And then, less famously, he puts a literal set of horns on a knight. Now, you like if your DM's willing to work with you and stretch the interpretations of a spell to make it, arguably less powerful, you could potentially do it with polymorph or maybe seeming. But a vague enough spell that can actually also work for it is Bestow Curse, which warlocks don't usually get. However, there is an invocation that they can take, the Sign of Ill Omen, which allows them to cast Bestow Curse once using a warlock spell slot. I find that wording stupid, and I'll let because most warlock invocations is like, oh, you can cast this once without a spell slot, or you can cast this at will as if it were a cantrip, like for instance Armor of Shadows and Misty Visions. So I'm happy to say, okay, you can cast it once without burning a spell slot. And then, of course, the way to reverse it after the Knight's Lord is done laughing and asks you to, is with Remove Curse, which warlocks do also get. So we're all talking about, 5th level spells and under, which a warlock would have by level 10. So why can't we just do 10 levels of Fiendlock and then do Wizard for our, invisibility? Because we also need true polymorph. See, Faustus sells a farmer a magnificent horse, but what the farmer doesn't know is that this magnificent horse is really a hay bale that had been turned into a magnificent horse. Well, we can't do that with polymorph. We need true polymorph, which is an 8th level spell, which means we need at least it's a 9th level spell, which means we need at least 17 levels of warlock to get true polymorph to get a farmer wet. Phrasing. So, and of course, maybe drop some, maybe drop a level or, a level of rogue in there to get some expertise for your knowledges. Or you can just go, full 20 levels of warlock if the campaign lasts that long. But these are basically the notable feats that these were the notable feats that Dr. Faustus accomplished, and how to kind of build your own Dr. Faustus, if you will. Now, I will be putting a suggested character build on my Patreon for those of you who are a member. Thank you to Santi the Sane and PJ Smith. And of course, the Patreon link is located in the description below. Now, with that, remember, indoctrination is a hell of a drug. And be sure to keep your knife arm free and your shield at full charge. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you know. Did you really think there would be an ever after? Do you think I'm scared? Tell me, does it show when has happened death and what has always happened after? I don't know what I'm thinking, for all that I can see is his face grinning Mephistopheles. I need to find an answer, for this one cannot be within the words of Mephistopheles.